let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, this meeting of the Parks and Public Works Committee. Hey, everybody. Okay, I can't see. These are dollar store readers because my glasses broke. What do we usually start with? We usually start with, there we go. There we go. Hey, they're working. Call to order and roll call. Ms. Dean, will you know everybody's here? And my Atari has started. That's good. And agenda approval. Anything to say about the agenda? Talked about possibly flipping discussion point 3. I think it was discussion point 3, the downtown tree planting project and grant, swapping that number 2, the proposed budget discussion.
Second.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna make that switch. We're gonna move that we're gonna swap number 2 and 3, Ms. Dean. And next thing is public comment. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. We have to approve the agenda still.
Second.
It's approved. All right. Public comments. Anybody here for public comment? Lots of people here. I don't have to check online because we don't do that anymore. Okay. Public comment period is over. Approval of the minutes from our last meeting on August 6th.
Second.
Okay, this is not going to work. All right, then the agenda is approved, and let's move on. Mr. Bennett. Hey, I will. Thanks, man.
Testing. Okay, that works. I'm going to keep this brief. Thank you for your time. This is to let you know about something that we are going to be doing shortly. The project actually begins this week. And so we received some funding, some grant funding from Washington State Department of Natural Resources. This is a sub-award from the Inflation Reduction Act through the Forest Service. We got our chunk of the 1.5 billion. So we got $75,500 to plant 302 street trees in the remaining public planting sites in downtown Snoqualmie. By the way, I shouldn't be giving this to you. Jason should, but he didn't write the grant. I did. So we rock, paper, scissors. Here I am. Anyway, so some details. The project, the purpose is to bring canopy levels up in the 2 census blocks in downtown Snoqualmie that have the least canopy. So there is an online tool through American Forests called a Tree Equity Score, and it evaluates a series of factors to make sure that communities basically are distributing their green resources so that all residents can access them fairly equally. So we identified in here that there's a couple of census blocks where there's less canopy level. There are those 2 on the bottom right of the screen. And this project was designed to do what we can on public property to bring us up to those levels that are present elsewhere in the community. So what you have there is a bunch of dots. The dots represent either trees that are currently there or trees that we plan to add. And so we have, in downtown Snoqualmie, we have utility lines above ground, which we don't have on Snoqualmie Ridge. And so as part of this project, we are going to be planting under the lines, but we're going to plant with trees that are appropriate for those applications. So we're going to plant utility trees under the lines. The power company approves those. There's no issue there. So does the communications company. We've got 3 phases to the project, and we're beginning, like I said, this week on east of Highway 202. In the spring, we'll move to west of Highway 202, and then we'll conclude the project with 20 trees for Arbor Day at Centennial Fields next year. So that's basically it. Wanted to let you know about the project and see if you had any questions.
Can you go back to that the map that you were?
Sure.
where they're gonna go. And what were the yellow dots?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that because I can't see my screen either. So okay, I got it. So the orange dots are existing trees. And the yellow dots are trees that have communications cables, or they're locations where we want to plant trees where there's communications lines above. The red dots are trees that we want to plant where there are power lines above. And the green dots are trees that we want to plant where there are no lines above. And the implications of that is we choose different things for each one of those sites.
That's a lot of trees. Right, you just magically made these appear, like writing the grant.
No, Jason is magically going to make them appear. I wrote the grant.
All right, I love it. Kat,
Is there any particular types of trees that you're going to be using as far as species?
Yeah. So we have for phase one, we have about a dozen different species picked out, and we looked at them for trees that we know work here in Snoqualmie, trees that have no disease issues that we're aware of, trees that are good with climate scenarios, trees that also operate well with the surrounding utilities. We took all those things into account in our selection of those species. So we're going to use some that we think are great trees, but they're underutilized.
And will there was something in the letter you wrote or the paperwork you included that was, or Jason's letter, excuse me, with the cost savings, and how does that apply to the stormwater? It's because of the canopy, there's more water absorption, or is it prevention of things going into the stormwater system?
Correct on both counts. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as far as purifying the water, how does that work? Is it just that what's going in the storm drain is cleaner?
So the surfaces of leaves, the surfaces of bark all have texture to them. That texture captures particulates that otherwise would flow. If they weren't there, they would just hit the ground and keep running. The soil bed around the tree does the same thing. So all of those components work on water quality. And then there is also a quantity of water that is retained by those same parts of the tree.
so then, I'm sorry, so then if you have a tree with a big canopy where you would normally just have a green space next to the sidewalk, it's sort of like an aerial swale that.
That's
Okay.
true.
That's neat. I did not know that. That's so cool. Do you want to teach us anything else,
I'm good.
Mr. Holloway? Good. All right.
Last question.
Yeah.
Did you need council members to come to?
It is entirely up to you. We don't need you to be there, but we wanted to make sure that you got the invite, that you were aware of it. And so if you chose to come, you'd be welcome. Okay.
And where's that meeting going to be again?
Riverview Park. And that's actually on Thursday. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think the next thing's you. Right?
It is. So really, I'm just here to set the table. The stars of your show are actually over here in the audience right now. I'll let them introduce themselves when they get up here. Like I said, just to set that table, we've gone through about 7 or 8 hours of work when it comes to the budget, and thanks to council's diligence and really hard work when it comes to this. We're starting to kind of reach the other phase of this, which is to really kind of turn the budget over to council. So what you're looking for coming up, we're going to go through and kind of complete the department presentations today at the committee level. Hopefully, we're going to gather your additional questions that you may have directed to the departments. If we can't answer them here today, then we will return on the 23rd to hopefully answer those questions. But in addition to that, what we're hoping to receive from council, specifically by the end of the 23rd, is some potential modifications to the budget that you may want to see. The goal for that is to actually take that information and then produce the financial analysis necessary to make sure that we're living within our means. So that means making sure that we're maintaining a balanced budget based on those requests, and also making sure that we have our reserve targets met as well. Consequently, if we can kind of figure that out and kind of shape that up, the goal would be to come back on September the 30th for kind of a final review for council, and then ideally on October the 3rd for a budget adoption. So we are progressing at a good pace to get through the budget overall. But those are kind of what some of the next steps are. Feel free to email any questions that you have to us. We're still completing a log kind of as we go along. You certainly have seen 30+ questions answered over time, but we know that there's likely more to come along as a result of that. So with that said, I think that kind of hopefully lays the groundwork a little bit, and I will turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, folks. Jeff Hamlin, Parks and Public Works Director. So we have quite a bit to get through tonight, so we're gonna go fast. I think we still have enough time to get through it all and have time for questions. So, I mean, if you want to ask questions, feel free. So the Parks and Public Works Department has about 38 employees. We have 38 currently. And they're represented by the people that we have here tonight, our superintendents for each of the divisions. We have 6 divisions in Parks and Public Works, which includes engineering, parks and streets, fleet and facilities, water, wastewater, stormwater, and urban forestry. So I'm going to kick this off today with a discussion about the engineering division. So slide. So the engineering division has 3 engineers, and you know all the folks in the engineering division, of course, Pat, Andrew, and Hind. We have a CIP manager who is Dylan, and we have a GIS and now our asset management program manager who is Brendan Ecker. And those 5 people form the basic, consist of our whole engineering program. Our focus in the engineering program is the CIP, the Capital Improvements Program, which is broken into 2 basic funds. There's the non-utility and the utility capital. Of course, you know that the non-utility fund includes parks and streets, trails, facilities, etc. And the utilities fund primarily focuses on water, wastewater, and stormwater, and urban forestry as part of that program. The engineers, they champion and manage those projects and programs in the CIP, among many other duties. Next slide. So here is a list of our major accomplishments. Rather than read that list to you, I'm going to actually talk about a few of these. Next slide. We'll focus on some of what I would consider our most successful accomplishments in the last 2 years. The Parkway restoration. We completed that in a year, and we did it for $1 million under budget. That was a tremendous success. Hind Ahmed was the project manager. She was outstanding. Centennial Fields all-inclusive playground, also a very successful project. I think that has become our most popular park in the whole city. If you go out there on any day, you'll see it swarming with children and adults, because I think everybody is fascinated by the playground. And then, of course, our water reclamation phase 3 project, which has been a tremendous success. So far, we just got our first ditch up and running, and the numbers are coming back, and it is performing as good, if not better, than we had hoped it would. So that has been a tremendous success. Next slide. As you guys know, we have started on the Kimball Creek Bridge project. That one is progressing. I would like to say it's progressing on schedule, but I can't quite say that. But we have a plan to catch up. They have a fish window to meet, and we have rainy season coming in on us. So that one's a little bit of a concern, but I would say that getting it to this point has been a success so far, and we got to bring it home. Sandy Cove Bank Stabilization Project, phase 1 was completed last summer. We were hoping to do phase 2 this summer, but that got stalled in permitting with the Corps of Engineers. But we do have that on the boards for next summer, and I can almost assure you that we will get it completed next summer. And then 3 and 4th sewer. I think you guys saw that during the field trip. That pipe is now installed. We are doing service connections now, and they are planning to do the cutover on that, I think, next week or the following week. And then we'll start on the sidewalk and hopefully have that project completed close to the end of the year, if not early next year. Next slide. Okay, so budget tables. So I have 2 budget tables here. And rather than about budget tables. I think you guys have seen all of these budget tables. And in the interest of time, we are not going to talk about budget tables. We are happy to answer any questions about them, but rather than linger on these things, we want to just touch on the fact that we're not going to talk about it. You want- So, next slide.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Ryan, you usually have questions. Is this something you have questions on at this point, or keep on rolling? Keep rolling.
All right, next slide. Okay, so outlook and work plan. So this is what we're going to be working on for the next couple of years, or the next biennium. Primarily in the engineering group, we have several things, kind of housekeeping things. We had to update some of our administrative procedures, and there's going to be some with the advent of asset management. We're going to take that opportunity to update policies. We are developing new design standards and improving our training, our filing system, and other things internal to that division to help us improve operational efficiency. Projects, we got lots of projects. Again, another list of projects. And rather than read this list of projects to you, I think, well, maybe I will just touch on a couple of these major ones. So of course, water reclamation facility. We're still going to have to finish that. That will be finished next year. We're hoping by spring that will be complete. The pilot study. We're doing a pilot study for ASR, for aquifer storage and recovery. That is still maintaining its schedule, and that's hopefully going to be a successful project. River Trail Phase 1 and Sandy Cove Bank Stabilization both will be completed next summer. The splash pad, Mike assures me that will be done this year. Right?
Just in time for Christmas.
Anyway, community center expansion, that's dependent on grants, but we will continue to seek to complete that project, or at least get it started in 2026. The reclaimed water reservoir, that needs to be completed by 2026 to maintain our permit. And then we have 4 railroad crossing projects, which are entirely grant funded. So that is a gift from the feds. Next slide. Programs and studies. So programs and studies, rather than kind of go through all of these things, a lot of what the engineers do is manage these programs. These are relatively low cost, but high impact projects. They're popular programs but very necessary. And rather than read this list to you, I mean, I'm happy to, of course, but the sidewalks, the pavements, ADA transition, the stormwater and our discharge, our wastewater discharge, solid waste, of course, and our parks replacement programs, and then the additional studies, which are ongoing. Next slide. Real quickly to talk about a few of the highlights, the PROS plan. The PROS plan is nearly completed. And I believe we have a draft now, and I think you'll be seeing that here in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure when that's going to be ready, but it's very, very coming up very soon. Parks replacements, that includes playgrounds, play surfaces, turf, pavement management on the parking lots, et cetera, trails. So there's a lot to do in that program, but those are high quality of life features that we get a lot of kudos for, and it's something that the city prides itself on, and we maintain that. Sidewalk replacement program, of course, streets resurfacing program. Well, that's just good business. Maintaining your pavements is a lot less expensive than replacing pavement. And then our urban forestry improvements program, which we're going to talk about a little bit more here from from our superintendent for urban forestry. So that's it for my little. Is there any questions? Otherwise, I am going to hand this over to our parks superintendent, Tim Barrett, to give his presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Tim Barrett, Parks and Streets Superintendent. Start on the next slide. Our Parks and Streets Department is built up of 7 employees. We have 4 parks employees, 1 street employee, 1 lead, and myself. Next slide. Next slide. During last biennium, a couple things that accomplishes that I'd like to talk about are Azalea. Our guys were able to rebuild the picnic shelter after a fire in-house. We reestablished the park mowing crew when we were short-staffed over the pandemic. Next slide. Streets Division, a couple things I'd like to point out are implementing the sidewalk repair program, as well as replacing many of the worn and missing signs throughout the city. Next slide. And this is the budget slide that you've all seen over the last few weeks. Next slide. Some of the things we're working on for the next biennium. A couple things that would be replacing aging and failing split rail throughout the parks in the city. Utilizing Tyler Munis, repairing damaged walkways and paths around the bog and community park. And in the streets department, next slide. Reestablishing alleyway maintenance program, continuing sidewalk repair program, and utilizing Tyler Munis. That's all for me. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Don Harris. I'm the Fleet Facility Superintendent here at the City of Snoqualmie. Our mission in the Fleet Facility Division is to keep our city moving. We have about $13.8 million in assets. Next slide. Our Fleet Division consists of 1 3/4 employees. Our Facility Division is 1 1/4 FTEs. Next slide. We have 125 assets that we manage. Our accomplishments were that we purchased 12 new assets and surplus 7 in the 23-24 biennium. Next slide. Facilities, we maintain 5 major buildings. And 2 of them are housed 24/7, which is our fire and police station. Next slide. This slide, you've been provided in the last week. You should have already been able to view this. Next slide. This one also. Next slide. Plan for 25 and 26 is to purchase 19 new vehicles, 14 pieces of equipment for $3.46 million. Next slide. Our facilities plan is to continue our security improvements and utilize Tyler Munis for all work orders and tracking parts and work. Any questions?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No.
No, you go.
Oh, Mr. Chair, please.
Okay. How do you anticipate Tyler Munis is going to assist you in what you guys do?
It will actually, when it requests from internal, because it'll track that better than we have now. Right now we do it just by email. And we don't log into a software right now. So we'll be able to utilize that part of it.
Councilmember Cotton?
Just a question, sorry about back on the numbers, but in the big difference between the biennium miscellaneous revenues, in the 25-26, it went up to 2,631%. So from like 80,000 to 2 million. Is this part of the internal services charging, or is there other sources of revenue coming in?
You want to answer that?
Go ahead. Jeff.
Yeah. So we've restructured the ER&R program, and actually I prefer to have the finance folks answer this one, but we've kind of restructured the way we do that. And Drew or Janet, do you guys want to take that one on? Okay. Oh, that's on the revenue side, right?
While we're killing time here, the double, the capital outlays in the 25-26, compared to the previous biennium, I'm assuming this is part of the internals charging differences. And then, it was the same with services, so I just wanted to make sure that that was, how that was, where that was coming from.
Which page do you want, Kat?
61.
For capital outlays are made according to the replacement schedule. I think I'm cutting in and out.
Yeah, I know that the 33.4 million is gonna be all the vehicles that was listed. It
Mhm.
was on the replacement sheet. I did see that. And, but it was more the services also doubled. And again, I was wondering if that was the charging, the difference in the internal structure of the charging for the services between departments and stuff.
Yeah, so there's a couple of for the service row that you see there. It's pretty clear, contracted services is certainly gone up. So they're budgeting better when it comes to fire authority. For example, the service work that they do on our fire equipment,
Right.
especially the apparatus, and so a lot of that increase is right there as a result of that. In addition to that, there are additional service costs related to the accessories that we have to add to the vehicle, and potentially some other additions contributing to that as well.
Okay, so that goes under the services versus under the.
Basically, so the capital outlay that you're just gonna see right there is
Just-
for the replacement of those vehicles. Yep, strictly for that.
Anything else?
Yeah, just waiting for the.
She didn't get a quick answer to her original question.
You see wheels turning.
I guess I do want to go back, if I may, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe it's a follow-on, again, internal services went from 505 to $1.1 million. Or is this catch up? Were we not doing this before? How come this, I understand services jump somewhat, just by inflation and cost of services lately. Okay, but that's,
And it's
doesn't
outfitting.
equate for 100%, 120% jump.
Also part of the police outfitting of the new rigs.
There are definitely some enhancements. One of them is we're buying 6 police vehicles and each one of those has a $25,000 accessories, peripherals, things like that for each vehicle. There are a couple other things going on. There's $100,000 budgeted each year for generator servicing. There is a fuel polish, tank polish that will be occurring this year. And then we also have included budget for property damage. In years past, when we've had accidents, which are covered by insurance primarily, less a deductible, that amount has just come out of either budget or we've wondered if we needed to get an amendment or something like that. And this year we've budgeted, I believe it's $260,000 to cover accident repair. And these are detailed in the section of the budget binder under major changes. So there are a lot of enhancements, I would say, to 501 this year.
So how did you keep it? Keep it to 1.1 million? Because I mean, the difference between the last biennium and I mean, that would have been, that difference would have been covered by the police vehicles alone.
Police vehicles would total closer to, I think, 160,000, and we're seeing like a 500,000 or 600,000 increase. Is that?
So wait, you're gonna get 6 vehicles for 160,000?
Maybe I wasn't clear enough. So we're purchasing the vehicles out of the capital outlays. So that's the lower line where you see.
Oh, I see. So it's the
3.5
$25,000 package
On
that,
top of
okay, all right,
whatever a police
okay.
vehicle costs.
all right, thank you.
And then the $100,000, it's for the per year or for the biennium for the generator monthly servicing?
That is per year. 100,000. So I think it's 200,000 over the total.
This is all the generators at the pump station.
Yes, correct. All the generators.
So I believe the difference that you're seeing in miscellaneous revenues, we charge a vehicle, a rental fee. It's basically a replacement charge to every department that's using vehicles. They receive an annual charge so that at the end of the life of that vehicle, we can replace it. And I'm not sure why that wasn't captured in miscellaneous revenues last biennium, but it's definitely captured there in this biennium. So for whatever reason, a better comparison is if you combine charges for goods and services with miscellaneous revenues. Is it something else?
Still a jump from 3.
Still, Joe, if I combine goods and services, miscellaneous services, it was still $3 million in the prior biennial, and you're at $2.5 million or I'm sorry,
4.9.
$5.5 million in the next biennial.
So we did make some changes to, not to the methodology with which we apply the ER&R charges, internal service charges, but we changed some of the underlying numbers. We noticed that if we continued on the same path that we were on with charging vehicles, that at the end of 2028, we would be out of funds. We would have nothing left to purchase these police vehicles and the fire apparatus, things like that. So we made some changes to the methodology. We noticed that every year when we were charging these replacement charges, it was based on the original purchase value of the vehicle. And the vehicles have been, their value inflates every year, of course, and especially in the last few years. So we've changed our reliance on that number to a today's value. What is that vehicle worth today? And then we apply the same calculations that we have in the past to determine what we should charge as a replacement charge. So it's gone up substantially.
So you're depreciating not based on the cost of the vehicle, but based on the replacement of it.
And just, excuse me, a follow-up. Can you explain to me again, the rental charge that we are charging for our own vehicles?
Yes, essentially, Fleet owns all of these vehicles, and all the departments that are using them are charged a fee, like similar to a lease fee to use them. And so that fee goes back to ER&R, where eventually we have enough money to replace that vehicle. And so that's those charges that you're seeing within miscellaneous revenues. Those are charges specifically for that replacement cost of that vehicle.
So, and I admit, I'm not a financial person, but so the money is basically being shuffled around so that it's maybe in a different fund when it's time to pull money out to purchase or replace the rigs, basically.
Yeah, it's an internal service.
Okay.
And so that we try to treat it like a business, and so that we have a fair and equitable cost, so that one department doesn't think, oh, wow, these vehicles are free. I'll just use as many as I need and then a few extra. We try to determine a cost that will represent the real value of what it costs to provide those vehicles.
But that being said, if a department doesn't use a great deal of vehicles, then they aren't charged as much as a department that does. So it reflects the real cost of running that department. That's correct.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I understood that, so it must have been a good explanation. Thank you. Next.
My name's Matt Hedger. I'm the Water Division Superintendent. I've been with the city just over 22 and a half years and the superintendent for almost 3. So. Slide up. Overview, got myself, 5 water techs and 1 irrigation tech. 2023, we produced and treated over 525 million gallons with no DOH violations. We maintain roughly 69 miles of water mains and roughly 8 miles of the Class A irrigation mains. And we also maintain over 700 hydrants.
Do you have a least favorite mile?
Yes.
It just got fixed, so no, I don't.
What's that Williams edition?
Maybe that should be the best accomplishment, but I'm gonna go with staffing first. We've been woefully understaffed since COVID. And luckily, with the help of the council, Mike and Kim, we went through, came up with a good CBA agreement that upped our salaries and created more of a career path for the water department, where we could hire tech ones, which we've never had the do before. We went through about a 2.5 year period where we had jobs posted, but we weren't getting any qualified interest. So we created tech ones, more of a career path. In the last 6 months, we've hired 3 new water techs, 2 tech ones and tech 3.
So I'm sorry, because I don't totally understand what you're saying. It sounds like you're saying that you've restructured staffing so that there's a path for advancement.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what was the situation before?
Well, I've been with the city for 22.5 years, and for 20 of those, I was a tech 2. There was no room for advancement unless used to be tech 2s, a lead and a supervisor, and unless the lead or supervisor left, there was nowhere to move to.
And now where can you?
Now we've created a path where with years of service and certifications that you earn, you can move to different levels.
Like a tech 3, tech 4?
Yes,
Okay.
we have 1 through 4, and then the supervisor.
So there's more of an acknowledgement of the years and knowledge that are accumulated.
Certifications, which during COVID, we lost people, which took with them many certifications. And so we were lacking on certifications, and this is hopefully going to alleviate that problem. So when somebody leaves, there's somebody that can plug in, and you're not completely started.
And are you seeing then, am I understanding that there's more of an excitement about
Oh, absolutely.
becoming a
Yeah.
tech 1 because there's,
Well, before we didn't have tech 1s. So people were coming in, had to be a tech 2, and had to have certain certifications. And at the time, our pay was, on par, subpar, and we were not getting other places that people would want to come here and work because the pay wasn't exactly, it wasn't any better than where they were at. Now with the new CBA, we've got higher pay and an actual path for you to advance if you choose to.
that's neat. Thank you. Thanks for explaining that.
All right, and then we'll go back to the Williams edition. The picture there on the right is probably the same picture that I could have taken for all 10 of those main breaks. And with I realized it was a CIP project, but it took a lot of pressure off of the water department. We had 10 main breaks in less than a year and a half in the same area where the weak spot was. Now the weak spot is fixed. So, and the other thing I wanted to notice here is the irrigation. Of those 4 employees that were here, one of them is our irrigation tech, and he was actually very new also. This is his first full year running our irrigation. And he had a goal of cutting our usage by 30%. And we are definitely on track in 24 to easily beat that. Just in July and August alone, there's been a 40% reduction and a 50% reduction, which equaled to about 8 million gallons of savings in July and 7 million gallons in August. Just by playing with the system, not watering established areas as much as were in the past, and there's been quite a reduction in water usage.
How much dead plant life do we have as a result of it?
None.
So zero.
Most of the areas, well, and I think most of you will notice in the past, during the summer, when you just washed your car in one of the few dry patches that we have, and then you drive down the parkway and there's water running down from the irrigation the night before, getting your car dirty again. I don't think you noticed any of that this summer. Most of the parkway is well established, especially the vegetation part. And so that can be cut back a lot. Any areas that have established trees, a backwater there also.
And who's the guy that's responsible for this?
Justin Wren, he's our new irrigation guy that he took over pretty much January 1st when our previous irrigation tech retired.
That's awesome.
Next slide. You want to talk about numbers? You've seen these numbers. I will move on unless there's any questions here. Next slide, please. And our outlook, because of all the new staffing, we have a lot of training. Just learning our system is just half of it. We require them to get certain certifications, not just to help us, but for them to advance. And I'm hoping by the middle of next year to have 2, if not 3 people on standby, where it's just been 2 or 3 of us that have been doing it for the last 3 years. So we will also be utilizing Tyler in our work orders, tracking stuff. And most of our cost changes are due to our communication infrastructure, both in irrigation and in the water department. A lot of our stuff that when the ridge was originally built 25 years ago, that's a lot of our communication stuff, our cell modems, radios, PLCs. A lot of those they've made it this far, but they are not fixable when they go out. They need to be replaced. And so we are working on a lot of infrastructure on the irrigation side and the water side. The picture on the right there is our PRV out at Canyon Springs. We're working on automating that, trying to eliminate a lot of the confined spaces that we've previously gone into. And we just recently bought a valve turning machine, and we're looking at reinstituting our valve turning program. We've got about over 2,200 valves in the system that, being understaffed, it's been put on the back burner. And we are going to be starting to do that, to turn those at least once a year. And the picture on the left is one of our irrigation
Cabinets.
yeah, and we've got 65 of those cabinets out in the field. We're working to upgrade the irrigation system also. Our MaxCom system is a little old, outdated, and they don't really support it anymore. So we're working with Rainbird to replace what we can do in the cabinets so we don't have to replace the infrastructure. So, any questions?
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Holmes. I'm your wastewater superintendent. Wastewater has basically 2 lines of business, water and wastewater. It's obvious what we do, right? But I'm trying to put it in
as few words as possible, which is that we recover the most valuable resource that you have in the city of Snoqualmie, which is water. So if you look at the list of accomplishments that we did in the last biennium, you'll see that in the biennium, we treated and recovered 1 billion gallons of sewage.
I'm sorry, how many?
1 billion gallons of sewage.
It sounded like you said billion with a B.
Yeah, billion with a B, that's correct.
Wow.
So, that water gets used for, as reclaimed water when we recover it, goes to the golf course. Or it goes to the river, but either way, it's good for the environment. And, we also maintained, 11 miles of sanitary sewer. We produced over 500 tons of biosolids, which is a beneficial product. 500 tons just happens to be the weight of a 747. So.
Can you
People
fly
work
this bio stuff? What is the biomass? What is it again?
Biosolids, it's the solids that go down the drain, just treated differently. So we produce, everything you put down the drain.
Right.
Ends up at the treatment facility. The biosolids are all of the microorganisms, when they're done processing the waste, we take those microorganisms and we separate out the water, and the microorganisms go over to Eastern Washington for farmland.
Oh,
And so, outside of that, I'd say that.
is that, I'm sorry, is that a revenue source for the city as well? Do we sell them that, or is that just?
Cost,
It costs us to get rid of it, but it's made useful by farmers in Eastern Washington.
that's right. But that's a state requirement, so you have to use it beneficially, so. We can go to the next slide. Same thing, you guys have been talking about this, so let's go to the next one. What are we looking at doing in the future? So now that we have enough staff, our plans are focused on programs in the collection system. So we spent a lot of money and a lot of resources on the treatment. And our plans are to focus primarily on the collection system. That involves, we've got a goal to clean 1/3 of the sewer pipes in the city every year. So we have roughly 50 miles of sewer main out there. And so our budget request involves being able to do that. Clean 85 wet wells. Big ticket item that we have on there is negotiating a new NPDES permit with the city of, or with the state. That'll come up in the next biennium. So outside of that, that's it.
Councilmember Cotton.
There was, on one of the previous slides, you had stated that there was was it maintaining or the utilization of sanitary sewer lines? Is that a thing?
We made, well, sanitary sewer, yeah, sanitary sewer is the term. It's just how it's referred to in engineering, sanitary sewer.
And I mean, is there such a, can you have sanitary sewer?
You do have sanitation.
I
If you didn't have
believe you.
sanitation, then there would be disease because the water would be contaminated.
Right,
So
right.
yes, it is sanitation.
Okay, okay. Sorry, it seemed like an oxymoron.
And if you're from California, they use the word sanitation all the time down there.
Just don't have a lot of it.
We just typically refer to sanitation in Washington as garbage, but sanitation itself is talking about sewer for the most part.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Battles, next up.
Good evening, Jason Battles, Urban Forestry and Stormwater Superintendent. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our mission is in line with the city's mission of maintaining and stewarding our green and built environment, whether we are pruning street trees or taking care of our catch basins or our 58 stormwater facilities, or engaging our residents in our Green Snoqualmie partnership. We're focused on creating healthy forests, clean water, so that residents and visitors alike can come and enjoy our activity. Next slide, please. So for 23-24, we planted over 300 street trees. Green Snoqualmie Partnership, we're continuing to engage our residents. We inspected all of our catch basins and cleaned 237 to date. We replaced or repaired 3.64 miles of stormwater pond fencing. We maintained our 20 miles of soft surface trails. Again, we plant trees, so we also prune trees. So we pruned a bunch of trees as well. And then what we are affectionately calling Project Side Shave. You can move to the next slide. What we did was we came up the parkway and we took sediment and sod off the edge. And as you can see there, when it would rain, the water would just run down the edge of the parkway. And then as it banks to the median, it would just kind of cross the parkway like a river. And so what we did was we removed the sod and sediment, those years of buildup, so that when it rains, it evenly distributes itself off of the parkway into the bioswale as the utility is designed.
So when you do something like that, is there a measurable difference in contaminants when the water makes its way back to the treatment plant?
Well, with this, so what's actually happening now is that it's moving off of the road. So metals, your gasoline, oil, whatnot, is actually moving into the bioswale, and that's where it belongs.
Right,
Yes.
right. But I would anticipate that if that's not functioning properly, like prior to the shave, when we were like heavy beard on the side of the parkway, that it wasn't functioning as well.
Correct.
So what I'm wondering is there a difference that our treatment plants can measure in the effectiveness of that swale now that you've made it more accessible to the runoff?
Got it. I now understand your question. So the swale is actually working as the treatment itself.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So it's not going to like, so it's not going to like a treatment plant per se.
No, I understand
Can I
that.
jump in?
Okay, so do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I think there may be some confusion between our wastewater.
So
and our
this water
stormwater.
would never make it to the wastewater.
Never go to
treatment.
the, no, we don't have combined sewer here. We have sanitary sewer and we have storm sewer. So all of the roadway that's storm runoff, it gets treated in things like bioswales,
Right.
stormwater ponds and wetlands. The wastewater that comes from houses and domestic sewage, that goes to the treatment plant. So we don't want those separated. If they're combined, then we have a huge volume of water every time it rains, which dilutes the capacity or the treatment effectiveness. And we don't want that. So we want those two streams separated.
So then when I see a swale at the side of the parkway, that doesn't run anywhere.
Oh, the water flows through it. And what you're trying to do is spread that water out over the grass so that it runs through the grass at a very shallow. What that does is remove sediment and remove pollutants that are attached to that sediment before it overflows into a drain, which makes its way to the river.
Okay, so then if the swale isn't working properly, there's going to be more contaminants going into the river.
That first slide there that he's showing where that water that's supposed to be going into the swale, it's crossing the road and going into a drain, which goes right to the river. So
Okay.
it was not getting treated at all. So that's what we're doing.
Does that water get measured in any way by the city? Does that water get tested, measured, or are we testing the levels in the river itself?
We do not test the water. There is no permit requirement to test that water before it overflows to the river.
Okay, but to your point, what you're saying is that if we don't shave these things, we're going to get more of these rivers across the road, and we know just based on looking at the road that less water is getting treated by the bioswale. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
It takes me a while sometimes.
Oh, no,
So.
And that goes with all stormwater facilities, so that if we fall behind on maintenance, they are less effective. So it is part of our requirement from our NPDES permit that we maintain our facilities.
And did you come up with this shaving the swale idea, or is that something that's been done in other places that?
It was a team effort.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. But we could see that it was an issue and we decided to act on it.
That's awesome.
I just want to jump in for the police and fire chief. That river you see running across the road, huge hydroplane safety issue, and they've eliminated it. So thank you.
Right. Just fixing everything. All right, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
Fine. Okay, yep, so you've seen this budget. I do have a budget request and I'll talk about that in my last two slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we have coming up for our next biennium, we're gonna plant more trees, 450 of them. Green Snoqualmie Partnership, we're gonna continue to engage and we're gonna increase our volunteer hours. Hopefully, we're gonna get 6 new forest stewards. Again, we're gonna inspect and maintain all of our stormwater facilities. We're gonna also bring in and do some new signage on all of our trails that we have throughout the city. We're gonna prune 1,500 street trees. And we're also going to finish Project Side Shave from Orchard down to 202. And then we've also been utilizing Tyler, and that's been great for our workflow throughout the days and weeks. And then our next project coming up is Project Find a Pond. And you can go to the next slide, please. So as we've been telling ourselves, we know there's a pond in here somewhere. That's 2012 on the bottom right and then 24 top left. Next slide, please.
Just
Yes, sir.
on, you said you're gonna plant 451 trees. Does that include the 333 trees that Phil was talking about earlier? In the, to augment the downtown canopy?
It does include that, yes. We're gonna do 159 this fall and then the rest in the spring.
All right, great.
Yes, so why? So it is to meet our NPDES permit requirements, both for vegetation maintenance and for our annual pond inspections, and ultimately so that the utility functions as it's designed. What we have is 45 storm ponds. We haven't had a maintenance contract since 2020 for that. And also what we have, thanks to you, is a dedicated staff and the ability to do this work, but we also need some help. And we also have a clear plan. So next steps, we've assessed the ponds and we've rated them 1, 2, or 3. 1 being they meet our requirements. 2 being they need a lot of work. 3 being they're completely out of control. We've created a scope of work to meet the requirements, and we've identified contractors and gotten quotes in order to do that work. The last part is that we need funding in order to make that happen. Next slide, please. So currently we have 22 ponds rated at level 2 or 3 and 23 ponds rated at level 1. What we need is professional landscape services to bring those level 2 and 3 ponds up to level 1. We need to maintain the status of the existing level 1 ponds with the Department of Corrections. And we need professional landscape services to keep the newly minted level 1 ponds at that status with 88 maintenance visits annually. And then for the rest of this calendar year, with that time remaining, we're going to get 6 more ponds done. So with that, what I'm asking for is $84,000 to bring the remaining 16 ponds to level 1 status, and then $88,000 to maintain those 22 ponds for the next 2 years. Any questions?
At first blush, that sounds remarkably reasonable.
Is that in the budget as presented, or this is in addition to?
Addition to.
And staff is, okay.
The combination of urban forestry and stormwater is relatively new. It's 1 or 2 years. How long is it?
Yep, it's a year and 3/4.
And I think you talked about some of the benefits of that when you talked about, like shaving the parkway and, but how are we seeing that combination? What are some other just bullet pointed ways that combining these two has helped us in doing the job better?
Okay, well, I'll use the ponds as an example. So when we've rated our forests, we rate them on, okay, this is extremely healthy forest, or say like it's level 1. And then this is really out of control, it's a level 3. Bringing that mindset is, well, we're going to focus on the level 1 those, because if we focus on the level 3s, by the time we're done with those, our level 1s are going to be 2s or 3s. So that's one context. The other context would be, we also know how to maintain the natural environment. And so we also have the skills to be able to go and remove trees. We know how to treat, also, using herbicide needed. And so we can, because we understand the natural ecosystem, that helps us be able to maintain our ponds very effectively.
Thank you.
I can add to that real
Yeah,
quickly.
please do.
Combining those departments, stormwater and urban forestry, what we've actually done is increase the staff size of that group, which allows some flexibility in staffing. So sometimes we'll work on a project, and so the stormwater person can come over and help the urban forestry group for big projects, or vice versa. So a lot of times the urban foresters will be helping out with the stormwater stuff.
So it makes the whole operation a little more nimble.
It's more flexibility in operation.
Mayor?
It's 6:01 PM, so we do need the FNA meeting
Took
started.
too long. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned.